Welcome to Alimentary, the podcast series where you will learn about your amazing body, how it works, and of course why food is so important, and also pick up some simple recipe and lifestyle tips and tweaks to help you to influence your health in a positive way. In this short episode of Alimentary, I'm going to delve into the area of hormone balancing, but just focusing on one particular hormone for now, and that is cortisol. So hormones act as messengers in our body, and they're sent from one part to another to cause an action to happen. That means they control how our cells and organs do their jobs and when. They're made by our endocrine glands, and the endocrine glands that we would be most familiar with, for example, would be the thyroid, the adrenal, and the pancreas. So anytime you hear the word endocrine, you know that it's related to hormones. Hormones are also made in the ovaries and the testes. Now, an imbalance in a hormone means that we have too much or too little of it. And so Goldilocks always comes to mind with me when I think of hormones. We want them just right. Now, they also regulate each other, and so an imbalance in one can lead to over or underproduction of another, a bit like a seesaw. So this is why hormone balancing is really important to the proper functioning of our body and so our physical and mental health. The reason why I've picked cortisol to chat about today is because it's our main stress hormone, and we're dealing with an epidemic of stress and anxiety in the world, unfortunately. So I hope to explain how it works and the simple things that we can do on a daily basis to manage or regulate our cortisol. This will then have a positive knock-on effect on other aspects of our health. So I mentioned cortisol as our main stress hormone, and it's made by our adrenal glands, which sit on top of our kidneys. Cortisol controls mood, motivation, and fear. It's like our inner alarm system for fight or flight. And I did a previous episode about fight or flight versus rest and digest. It regulates our blood pressure, increases our blood sugar or glucose. So basically, when we're stressed, our body reacts just like it did thousands of years ago when stress was life-threatening. So when we were out hunting for food, the stress was, were we going to get home safe and sound, or would we meet a man-eating tiger or a bear? So our body thinks that when we're stressed, we need to be prepared to run away from danger. So our liver drops some glucose into our blood and raises our blood sugar level because glucose can be converted into energy the fastest. Our heart rate goes up to pump our blood out to our arms and our legs to deliver the glucose or the energy and iron and oxygen and all of those things that we need to run away. It's worth noting at this point that our other organs become sluggish because they're not needed to run away. So we don't need our digestion, our reproductive system to be working optimally when we're running away. In short spurts, cortisol keeps inflammation down. However, according to the Cleveland Clinic, if we have consistently high levels of cortisol, our body can get used to having too much cortisol in our blood, and that can lead to inflammation and a weakened immune system. Now, cortisol influences our sleep-wake cycle because when cortisol is high, melatonin is low. And melatonin is a hormone that helps us to fall asleep. So, of course, if cortisol is high, melatonin is going to be low, and then it's going to be harder for us to fall asleep. Now, we do obviously need that energy boost that cortisol gives us. For example, when we wake up in the morning and we open the curtains and let the daylight in, we get a boost of cortisol, and that helps give us the get up and go and the motivation to get on with our day. And if we are about to walk out in front of a bus or something, if we are in physical danger, we need cortisol to get us out of the way, to help us to run away. Or maybe sometimes we might have a deadline that we're working to, so we get a little boost of cortisol, a little adrenaline boost, and that helps us get it over the line. It just shouldn't be consistently high. That's where the problems start. So in terms of cortisol in relation to our gut, which is of course where I'm particularly interested, cortisol manages how our body uses food by selecting the right type of macronutrient, that's carbohydrate, fat or protein, that our body needs to meet the physiological demands placed on it. So going back to when we're in a stressful situation, our body thinks that we need glucose, we need sugar, so that's carbohydrates obviously turn into glucose. So, our body's going to look for that because it thinks we need to make energy really, really fast, So, obviously that's, a lot of times when we're stressed, we do go for carbs. Chronically elevated cortisol can lead to impaired digestive function. So this is one of the ways in which we can damage our gut lining. There are other things which can cause this leaky gut, which is where we get little holes in our gut lining, and chronically elevated cortisol. So stress can, be a trigger and a driver of leaky gut. What happens then when we've leaky gut is that food gets out into the bloodstream before it's been broken down into a form that our body recognizes and can use. So our army of our immune system in our blood, sees it as a potential threat. So it causes inflammation, and that's where, we might develop food sensitivities, until we heal our gut. Increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut leads to, malabsorption. So we're not getting as much out of the good food we're eating. We maybe potentially can't absorb it properly. It might even cause abdominal pain or discomfort and inflammation, as we said. So it's worth just saying at this point that, some people can have too little cortisol as well. For example, an autoimmune condition called Addison's disease. So while, we can all practice regulation of our cortisol, daily and a healthy lifestyle. There are some people who will need medical attention when it comes to regulating their cortisol. So always obviously keep your GP in the loop with any issues that you're having, in case it does need medical intervention. And obviously their advice, is the priority. So our daily modern day stressors are for the most part not life-threatening, as we said earlier. We might be sitting at a desk stressing about work or ruminating about a conversation, not running anywhere. So the cortisol did its job, but we haven't used up that blood sugar and our blood pressure is a little high. We haven't expended that energy by running away from the threat. So that physical movement hasn't happened and our body is still on higher alert. When we're in fight or flight chronically, other systems are sluggish and important functions are not working optimally. And of course, when our organs aren't working properly, we can experience a wide variety of symptoms from anxiety and depression, headaches, heart disease, memory and concentration problems, gut issues, trouble sleeping, and weight gain, especially around the middle, that cortisol belly. And also, there'll be an impact on our skin and our hair. So I know I certainly didn't really consider stress. I didn't consider that I was a stressed person up until the last couple of years. I, in my mind, thought that stress was worry, and I wasn't the kind of person that worried a lot, be fairly optimistic and all of that. But I can look back now and see that my body was highly stressed for loads of reasons. And because stress isn't just worry. There are lots of things in our modern world that can cause our body stress. So, for example, eating too much processed foods. So processed meats, high sugar foods, they provide little nutritional value and they put a stress on our liver in particular, trying to deal with them. Too much caffeine, too much alcohol is a stress on the body. Irregular eating times and irregular sleeping patterns, that affects our circadian rhythm. Blood sugar imbalances obviously can knock our hormones out of whack. Scrolling, so when we're looking at our phone, every time we look at our phone, that blue light is stimulating cortisol. Over supplementing, maybe with the wrong supplements. Being constantly busy. Illness or injury, of course, trauma, physical or emotional, and environmental stressors, constant loud noises, weather, too hot, too cold, crowds, pollution, that we're breathing in, crime and war. So there are lots of things which can cause stress on our body that we actually don't have, a lot of control over as well. So before we sort of address how we can maybe help to regulate our cortisol, I just thought I'd go through how cortisol influences some of the other hormones that we're most familiar with. So for example, estrogen, high cortisol levels lower our estrogen levels, and circulating estrogen can also increase the levels of cortisol in our blood. So in women, it helps to develop and maintain our reproductive system and our, characteristics like breasts and pubic hair. Estrogen protects our heart and our brain and improves our muscle mass and boosts our mood and can improve our sex life. So obviously very important that we have, adequate levels of estrogen, the right amounts of estrogen. Again, people can be estrogen dominant and have issues with balancing that. So when you start by balancing one hormone, it can have a knock-on effect of balancing another one as well. So progesterone is another hormone that you'll be familiar with, and high cortisol levels lower progesterone levels. Now, progesterone is our calming hormone. When we have adequate levels of progesterone, it tells us it's okay, I've got this. Everything's okay. But they use the same raw materials. So when we're using up all of those raw materials to make cortisol, we'll have lower progesterone. Now, progesterone also plays an important role in our reproductive system. And in women, progesterone supports our menstrual cycle and helps maintain the early stages of a pregnancy. So really important, for our fertility. So as I said, it's our calming hormone. So it helps us to sleep and reduce anxiety. And progesterone also balances out if we've too much estrogen. So again, progesterone and estrogen have a relationship. Progesterone works alongside estrogen in a balanced ratio. So when either one strays out of balance, the other one is affected, and we'll experience some symptoms. So growth hormone, a little cortisol will stimulate our growth hormone, but too much will inhibit our growth hormone. And our growth hormone will influence our height and helps to build our bones and muscles. We're always, rebuilding and repairing. Natural levels of growth hormone fluctuate, during the day, and they do seem to be influenced by physical activity. So levels rise when we exercise. Growth hormone levels increase during childhood and are at their peak during puberty, but we still need growth hormone throughout our lives. Testosterone is another hormone that we'll be familiar with, and too much cortisol will inhibit testosterone secretion. So testosterone is higher in males, but women do need testosterone too. So low levels will lead to low libido and fatigue. Now, testosterone helps men in particular with their bone density, fat distribution, muscle strength and mass, facial and body hair, red blood cell production, obviously really important, sex drive and sperm production. So insulin is another hormone that we'll be familiar with. Increased cortisol increases our blood sugar, as we said. So our liver drops some glucose down into our blood so that we'll have the energy to run away. So then if our blood sugars stay raised, our pancreas secretes some insulin, and the insulin is really, its job is to keep our blood glucose levels within the normal range. So if we're not using up that blood sugar to run away anywhere, insulin has to be produced to try and bring it back into normal range. Our body's always trying to keep everything in the right range. Homeostasis is what it's called. So our body's happy when everything's balanced. So if we are chronically producing insulin because our blood sugars are high, then our cells can just become resistant to the insulin, because it's like just fed up dealing with it. And this can mean that if the insulin isn't or getting into the cells, to deal with the glucose, then our blood sugar levels stay high. And this is what leads to weight gain, pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. The excess blood sugar is stored in our fat cells, or adipose fat. So I suppose we can see they're just sort of a few of the hormones that we're most, more familiar with, that we would talk about the most. But of course, there are other hormones as well. We've lots of different hormones in their body. But symptoms of hormone imbalance can include anything and everything from weight gain, unexplained and sometimes sudden weight loss, fatigue, muscle weakness, muscle aches, tenderness, stiffness, swelling in our joints, increased or decreased heart rate, sweating, increased sensitivity to cold or heat, constipation or diarrhea, or just more frequent bowel movements, frequently going to the loo, and increased thirst. Even when we're drinking water, we're quite thirsty. Increased hunger. We have two hormones that that in our tummy. We have ghrelin, which tells us when we're hungry, and leptin, which tells us when we're full. So for example, if leptin isn't telling us that we're full, we're possibly eating too much and driving our blood sugars. As you can see, they're all related. Other symptoms of hormone imbalance can be a decreased sex drive, depression, nervousness, anxiety, or irritability. Even our vision can be affected. We might get blurred vision. Obviously, our fertility can be affected. Our hair can become thin or brittle. Our skin might be dry. Our face can be puffy. We might even get stretch marks, all of these kind of things. So the symptoms or signs that our body's telling us that our hormones are imbalanced are wide. Now, of course, again, symptoms, this is why we shouldn't use Dr. Google either, because when you put in symptoms, that it can be there can be lots of different causes. So again, always keep your GP in the loop. If you're having any of these symptoms, obviously, especially if you've already made your lifestyle changes, so you know that you're still left with some of these symptoms when you have balanced your blood sugars and you're living a healthy lifestyle. So that seems like a lot of moving parts, but the good news is that we can keep it really simple. Really, all of that information is just motivation to focus on the simple daily habits that we can do, which will have, far-reaching benefits when it comes to our health. Now, it's not going to be a revelation for me to say that eating well, getting enough sleep, exercising and relaxation, really contribute to keeping your hormones balanced and your cortisol regulated. So why don't we do all of those things? So that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about cortisol first, because some of the daily habits that we can practice will help to regulate the cortisol, which will in turn then, help us to be in a mindset where we can actually implement further, healthy choices and practices during our day. So if we start off with basically breathing. So when we take a deep breath and let out a long, slow exhale, that long, slow exhale stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest. Now, doing 8 to 10 minutes every day of breathing exercises or a mindfulness practice, doing it consistently every day over a period of time has a cumulative impact, positive impact on our central nervous system. And that's proven by science, so we take 10 minutes to just really focus on our breathing. You can, obviously there's loads of apps, which can help guide you through it, but you can really just keep it really simple. And as I say, focus on how the breath feels, breathing in and breathing out in your body. Regular resets throughout the day. So maybe, at lunchtime, in the evening, you just take 2 minutes and just do some breathing exercise again. You could, if you're busy and running around the place, you might try to do it every time you get in the car, for example, or every time you have a bathroom break, just reset a few long, slow exhales to reset the central nervous system. Obviously, staying hydrated is really important, because when we're dehydrated, that's a physical stress, on our body. So just sipping your water throughout the day again is going to contribute. Eating obviously whole foods helps, so just less processed foods. Start swapping out processed foods for whole foods, because the processed foods, as we said earlier, are stress on the body and the liver in particular, so when you're eating whole foods, your body is less stressed. Walking in nature, of course, is amazing, and try and get outside early if you can, but just, at some point during the day, whenever you can fit it into your schedule, get out and walk in nature. One thing that I find good when I go for a walk is to do what's called a 5-4-3-2-1. Now, often if you have a busy head, you might go out for your walk and come back and hardly remember any of it. So with the 5-4-3-2-1, if you do this when you're setting out, you name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell and 1 thing you can taste. So basically you're awakening your 5 senses, and that helps get you into the moment, feeling present so that you can actually, take note of your walk and, get more benefit out of it. Singing at the top of your voice, dancing, laughing, having a good belly laugh, they all help us to reset our central nervous system because, when you're doing any of those things, you're in the present moment. You're not worrying about yesterday or tomorrow, and they're relieving stress in the body. So they're all super. Now, cold water is very good too. So, sea swimming is very popular. We don't all live near the sea, but obviously some people swim in lakes as well. Or take cold showers. So maybe turning your shower for the last, say, 30 seconds, turning it to cold. If you can't handle that, I know I find that hard in the winter. Even splashing your face with cold water or getting a face cloth and putting it under the cold tap, rinsing it, squeeze it out and put it on your face and on the back of your neck. So that's a cold compress, and that can help too. So sometimes that's good, if you're finding it hard to settle your head, to do the breathing exercises, maybe splash your face with cold water, take a drink and drink off water, and that can work. So let's mention some calming foods. So we could start with avocado. Avocado has B vitamins, and B vitamins are great for our central nervous system. Blueberries are a super source of antioxidants. So obviously antioxidants help to fight free radical damage to our cells. So when it comes to things like, air pollution and too much processed food, we definitely need our antioxidants. Calcium-rich foods, so dairy, nuts, seeds, leafy green vegetables, eggs with their vitamin D. Eggs also have vitamin B12. Nuts and seeds have magnesium, which is calming, and zinc, which is healing. Oranges, vitamin C, salmon, mackerel and sardines are good sources of omega-3. So our oily fish is the best source of omega-3, which is anti-inflammatory. Turkey is a good source of tryptophan, which is an amino acid which helps us to feel good. Actually, cashews have some tryptophan as well. Green tea, again for antioxidants. Chamomile tea is calming, and water just to hydrate and reduce inflammation as well. So if we can make some start off by just making some simple swaps, so you can add in some blueberries to your breakfast, make sure you choose maybe nuts and seeds over crisps for snacks. Eggs are so handy to add into anyone's diet. And of course we have our little oranges, our easy peelers are handy for our lunchbox, and just maybe choosing salmon and turkey, instead of red meat, too much of the time, and swap over a black tea or a coffee for a green tea during the day, and some of those simple swaps would be a great start. And the benefits, of course, of regulating cortisol mean that, that will help us to move on to maybe making bigger improvements into our lifestyle, because we'll have more headspace for it, when we can start to make, we'll be more mindful about the choices that we make. So I just want to finish up by saying that all of those practices will help to regulate our stress response, and they will just help our health in general. But at some point in our lives, we find ourselves in a situation where we might be experiencing like emotional or physical trauma, or have health issues, or just be in a very challenging situation where it's very difficult for us to get a handle on our stress ourselves. So we should never be afraid to ask for help. So whether that is reaching out to your GP or a therapist or a counsellor, obviously friends and family as well. But we might be in a situation where we need a trained professional, and there is absolutely no shame in that. We have all been there, and I certainly have benefited from support in the past. And life is short, so and our health is precious. And trying to struggle on and manage with stress all by ourselves is having an impact on our physical health too, So never be afraid to express how you're feeling to someone that you trust. Reach out to a trained professional and get the help that you deserve. Pumpkin seeds are the store cupboard staple for this episode. and they originally came from North America. They were used by first Americans for both food and medicine for hundreds of years. European explorers came across them and brought them back to us in what was called the Old World. Now, they're a great little seed. They contain minerals such as phosphorus, magnesium, iron, manganese, zinc and copper, and vitamins including B1, B2 and B3. They're also a source of protein and monounsaturated fat, that's a healthy fat, and phytosterols. So a great little, loads of nutrients packed into little pumpkin seeds. They enhance our heart and bone health, and they're great for prostate health too, actually. Now, there's loads of things that you can do with them. Obviously, have them in your glass jar somewhere handy where you can see them and you won't forget about them. Don't leave them in the back of the press anyway till they go off. I like to make my soup nice and thick, so I'll sprinkle pumpkin and sunflower seeds on top. They're great added to salads, so you can add them raw or toasted. If you're making a little homemade trail mix, you can include them in that with, say, some cashews, walnuts, coconut flakes, maybe, one or two pieces of dried fruit and some dark chocolate chips, of course. So when you're baking, actually, you could also add them into like bread or muffins or cookies. So really, you can really add them in anywhere, but just make sure that you get a handful of pumpkin seeds in every day. And hopefully there's enough there to encourage you to add them into your shopping trolley this week. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I just wanted to clarify that the podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional care from a doctor or trained health professional, nor constitute medical advice or services if you're in a position to need either. However, if you found it interesting, you can subscribe to make sure you don't miss future episodes, or sign up for my newsletter on lynsharkeynutrition.ie.